Hey everyone, just making sure things are going live like they're supposed to. And it looks like we might be there. Maybe. Bear with me for just one more minute. There we go. Awesome. Well, welcome to tonight's topic and free webinar on reasonable resolutions. And so the purpose of tonight is to help you learn how to consider or create some reasonable resolutions for 2026. And so I thought this would be a very timely topic to go over as everybody's contemplating and starting to go over those things. And so I guess we'll just go ahead and get started. First of all, I guess if you don't know who I am, my name is Lindsay Venn. I am a physician assistant and registered dietitian. I'm also a certified practitioner through the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. I have my own private practice that I'm working on growing, and that's part of why I'm giving these free seminars, is just to get the word out there. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. And of course, technology doesn't want to work when I need it to. Give me a second. Sorry. Exit out. And try one more time. Hi, Melanie. Let's see here. All right, let's try it this way. When in doubt, turn it off, right? And turn it back on. Again, thanks everybody for joining. I'm working on getting technology to cooperate. Let's see if this will work. And of course, no. Okay, we'll go to a backup plan if this isn't going to be cooperative today. Let me pull up that present. Oh, never mind. Now it's thinking about it. Okay, never mind. Sorry about that, guys. Give me 2 seconds and we'll pull it up on here. I don't really need to draw through this one anyway. So back to Zoom, share my screen. Oh. There we go. 2 more seconds. I promise it's coming up. Okay. Awesome. So hopefully everybody can see this okay. Again, I am CEO, single owner of Venn Integrative Medicine. And tonight we are going to talk about reasonable resolutions as we approach the new year. So the first part of this, of course, Happy New Year, everyone. Happy 2026 in a couple of days. But the first part of this I wanted to go over was, what are resolutions and where did they come from and why do they matter when it comes to what we're trying to accomplish, that most people try to accomplish in the next few days of setting these goals. So first of all, resolutions are actually thousands and thousands of years old. They are cross-cultural as well. And so you'll find some form of resolutions in pretty much every culture. And so this can apply to just about everybody. Back in the old day, in ancient history, the resolutions were very different than they are today. People were more focused on paying off their debts or returning borrowed items that they'd borrowed, or making sure that their conduct was morally acceptable in their community. In the 19th and 20th century, it did switch over to be more health-centric. And so that's what we're going to focus on tonight, of course, because that's my focus. How do we create reasonable resolutions for your health? And what's the best way to go about it? So first of all, there are 6 steps, and I'm going to go over each of these in detail. But the first step is to identify your problem areas. The second step is to assess your personal current situation. The third step is to figure out how to prioritize these things, because most people have more than one resolution. how to make sure that the expectations you have are realistic, how to find and utilize support and accountability techniques, and then how to maintain these resolutions once you've achieved your goal. And that part to me is one of the most important pieces. And so we're going to focus on all of these tonight. So the first one is the identification piece. And this part is extremely important. And so what I recommend to do is just get out a piece of paper and write down everything that you are not happy about when it comes to your health. I created a list here and I put weight at the top on purpose because most people, that's the focus. They want to lose weight. I wanted to dummy that down a little bit more, or maybe be a little bit more specific by saying maybe you actually want to focus not on just weight loss, but let's focus on visceral fat loss, because that's far more important when it comes to your health. Or maybe we want to focus on body composition more so than we want to focus on the number on the scale. Some other things you might want to consider is how's your sleep? If your sleep is terrible, weight loss is not going to come very well. And so maybe we need to put sleep habits in that list of things that's a problem. How's your stress? This is a really big one for so many people. Things like bad habits, things like smoking or alcohol intake, things like that are oftentimes on the resolution list. Dietary choices, this of course is kind of a no-brainer when it comes to the weight piece. Our exercise goals. Many of us will set exercise goals this time of year, but some other ones I wanted people to consider were symptoms. You know, do you have a symptom you don't like? Are you tired all the time? Are you cold all the time? Are you constipated? What are the different symptoms that you have that you don't like? Make sure to put them on this list. And then consider any conditions you might have. Do you have diabetes? Do you have insulin resistance? Do you have Hashimoto's? Or do you have, rheumatoid arthritis or joint pain of some kind? These are all things we can work on to improve, even if you have a diagnosis of something. This one, just like the maintenance piece, I think is extremely important. And so when I say assess your situation, I mean, you need to look at a variable of factors. Timing is a big one. I always use the example of my ex-mother-in-law. She was going through a divorce that was extremely stressful, and she was a smoker. And she says, I think I want to try to quit smoking. Well, maybe right now is not the best time to try to tackle that resolution, get through that situation that's a problem and maybe a barrier to success first. Second is finances. If your goal is to change your body composition and you want to become, 15% body fat, but you need to join a membership or join a gym or get a personal trainer and you can't afford it, then maybe that resolution needs to change based on that. Do you have external factors? A lot of my patients have adult children with disabilities that they're taking care of, or a loved parent or grandparent that they're taking care of. Are there external factors that will really be a problem when it comes to your resolution being something you can do? Do you have accessibility to things? So, if you want to clean up your diet really well, do you have access to really good, clean food? Do you have access to a gym? What do you have access to? Don't let your goal be dictated because you set it and you don't have access to the things that you need. How's your support system? This is a big one, and it was listed in the first 6 steps, so we'll talk about that more. If you don't have a support system, are there things you can do to get that? Do you have health barriers? Like, for example, the exercise piece of it. If you recently blew out your knee, or if you have chronic low back pain, things like that, are these health barriers going to inhibit your progress with the resolution? Mental status, this one's a big one too. A lot of people come to me and they just say, I've kind of just given in that I'm destined to be 50 pounds overweight, or, I don't deserve this. It's not in the cards for me. If your mental status is more negative than positive, it will greatly weigh on how your resolutions turn out. And then last is your level of motivation. At the first of the year, we all come out, flags of flying, all of those things, because it's that time of year and we say, okay, I can do this. I'm going to do this. That's great. But we want to make sure that your true level of motivation, 3 weeks, 3 months down the road, are you still going to have that motivation behind where you're at? Next piece is prioritization. And so really we want to prioritize these things by a few different statuses. One, is it realistic? If you're setting a goal that's not realistic, it's probably going to go down to the bottom of the list. Is it achievable? Same situation. Which one of your goals is going to have the greatest impact? Luckily, with a lot of things that we talk about, people who are overweight or want to change their body composition or want to reverse their insulin resistance, The goal then could very simply be, I'm going to change my diet, because that one goal will have the greatest impact on all three of those other things that I mentioned. And so look at which things are beneficial in multiple areas, because it will help you prioritize your goals. The one that has the most impact we'll want to put at the top of the list. Which ones are easy and which ones are hard? We want to get a little bit of reward out of this. And so always prioritizing the easy ones, the ones you're going to be successful at, is really important, because when you can do it, you get in there and you do it, and you can check it off the list. Like, look, I was successful. I did a really good job. You're going to have more motivation and drive to get to the rest of the list. And so we'll prioritize based on that. And then which one do you have the most support for? A lot of my patients have spouses who say, you shouldn't intermittent fast. I don't think it's good for you. They're counterproductive when it comes to this person's goals. And so make sure the ones you pick are the ones that you're going to get support behind to help you be more successful. The next one on that list of 6 I mentioned at the beginning was expectations. And so we need to make sure you set your expectations really well. And so first of all, when it comes to a time frame, I really, really recommend to set both short-term and long-term goals. So I'm going to use weight as the example here. If somebody wants to lose 50 pounds, that's a pretty daunting number that will be discouraging. We had a gal in our meetup on Saturday who said, perfection is procrastination. That a lot of times if we'd say, I'm going to lose 50 pounds in the next 6 months, you're going to create some procrastination because that number is so daunting. So set a short-term goal. This person's goal was simply, I want to lose 5 pounds a month, even though her weight loss goal was over 100 pounds in the end. That 5 pounds a month kept her going because she was able to continue to focus on the success that she was getting every month. So set both short-term and long-term goals. Make sure it's something that you can maintain. I have some patients, like for example, with a different person I work with, who he really, really restricts their diet. And many of them will say to me, I'm not going to go the rest of my life without dairy in my life. Okay, so maybe it's not a great goal to say I'm going to eliminate dairy, because if that's not a successful strategy for you, then maybe that's going to be a barrier to your overall ability to maintain or sustain your resolution. Look at the number of goals. If you set 20 goals, you're going to have a hard time. So start with just a handful of goals to begin with. You can always add on later. As you have more success, it's easy to add on because you're driven in that way. Look at things like I mentioned before that have overlapping impact. If one goal, one strategy will overlap into multiple problems, definitely important to recognize that. The perfection piece, like I mentioned, perfection oftentimes will lead to procrastination. So we want to set what I call an 80-20 rule, which I'll talk to you about in just a minute. And then make your goals measurable. And this is really easy with things like weight or body composition, the number of medications that you might be on. It's not so measurable when it comes to things like energy level or stress level or things like that, sleep. So find a way to make them measurable. I will use a grading scale, for example. You can say, right now my stress is at an 8 out of 10. I really want it to get to a 3 out of 10 in the next 3 months. So find a way to score things so that you can actually measure your progress. And then last, make sure you have a plan for getting back on track. Like I said, nobody is perfect. We don't necessarily ever expect perfection when it comes to this. So understand that you're going to have a few places where you struggle. And what is your plan for getting back on track when that actually happens? That should be an expectation. The next one was support and accountability. And so this one's really, really important. And I put at the top of this personal reflection. To me, this is really important because I don't like a lot of patting on the back and that kind of stuff when it comes to my health. I don't like working out in a group. I don't want to have a jogging partner, those kinds of things. So really reflect on where you need the support and the accountability and where you don't, and where it might backfire and turn you in the opposite direction. Look to people like your spouse. If you don't have a spouse, there's obviously different groups out there that you can join. At Insulin IQ, we have our lovely community, that is a great support system and a tool for accountability. Or you can always hire a coach or a personal trainer of some sort to give you that support and accountability that you might need if you don't have someone at home that can help with that. And again, don't enlist your spouse or your kids or whoever if you know they're just going to sabotage your efforts. So make sure it's somebody who is fully on board with what your goals are. And then last, there's different tracking devices that you can use. And so a lot of my patients will use a continuous glucose monitor. They'll use an Oura ring. We've got all these smartwatches now. So having a tracking device can be really, really helpful. And I'll go over a few of these in more detail as we get towards the end. So, and please feel free, anybody, I didn't mention it before, we can put comments in the thread. I'm more than happy to answer questions or talk about comments when we get to the end of this. So the maintenance piece, I think this is the hardest piece for most people. I mean, everybody here could probably raise their hand and say, yes, I set a New Year's resolution. I got to my goal that I wanted to get to. And 6 months later, I was back to where I was on day one. And so we really need to have a plan for this. If you don't have a plan in place when you get started, you're likely to fall back on old habits. And so really develop a maintenance plan along with your resolutions. Again, having strategies for when you fall off the wagon. This happens to everybody. There should be no guilt associated with that. Have a plan to get back on track when it falls off. Your expectations, again, what are they? Let's use the weight piece for example. If your goal is to lose 50 pounds in the next year, is your expectation to sustain that or maintain that weight loss moving forward? If your expectation's not there, you're not likely to maintain that weight loss. And so really making sure your expectations are drawn out clearly when you're deciding on this can be important. Make sure your support system will remain in place. Again, if you have a spouse that's really supportive, that's fantastic. If not, consider things like, group exercise. People go to their different exercise classes, or they have their trainer, or they have, places like Insulin IQ that have a community that make it really easy to maintain that support. The accountability piece is important, and you can do that through things like lab draws, through body composition analysis, visiting with your doctor every 6 months, whatever it might be, are simple ways to keep that accountability there. Again, the devices can be really helpful. Really reflecting again on what is my long-term goal here? And long-term means lifelong. How does that look in 1 year, in 2 years, in 5 years, or in 10? Really reflect on how that's going to be sustainable for you. And then is it feasible? Again, is the, if you want to work with a personal trainer for the next 3 months to get to your body composition goals, is it feasible for you to maintain that? Or is it something that you're going to have to scale back on by, say, moving to a gym membership or something rather than a trainer? So, excuse me, I did create a couple examples here that I want to go over just to make this applicable and let you put it into action. And so I've created this woman, and we're going to talk a little bit more about her in the next detail. But I've created a woman this is her goals that she wrote down on that identification piece of this. She wants to lose weight. She wants to improve her lean body mass. She wants to reduce her alcohol intake. She wants to reduce her stress. And she also wants to reverse her underlying insulin resistance. So that's step one, identify. Step two, assess your current situation. And for this lady, she has a very high stress job. On top of having a very high stress job, she works very long hours and she commutes to this job, which has been a problem for her, both stress wise and time wise. Finances for her, thankfully, to this job are not an issue. So she doesn't have a restriction when it comes to her finances. She has an extremely supportive spouse. She does have a history of failure. So that's lingering in the back of her mind. Like, I've done this for the last 5 years. I always start out strong and I always fail. That history of failure is really that mindset piece you want to pay attention to and figure out how to overcome. She's very motivated, like most of us this time of year. She does have some problematic back pain related to that long commute that she's got. And she does live in a rural location. So things like really clean food, a gym that's nearby, those things are not an option for her. So what should she do moving forward? So first, we're going to do step 3. We're going to prioritize those goals. And so over here, we're looking at these things. When she looks at her goal list, all of them overlap. Each of them is going to impact the other in a benefit way. So now we got to look at, okay, which one's the easiest? Which one is the most realistic for her? And which one is achievable in the time frame that she wants? And because of these things, we're going to turn around and prioritize that list. So for example, this is what I am using as an example for her, is she's going to say, yep, starting now, I'm going to reduce the alcohol to just weekends only because that's easy. It's actionable. It's one of those just stop here, versus changing your diet, for example, which gives you a lot of choices. This is just a yes or no kind of thing. She's going to reverse her insulin resistance, hopefully by changing her diet. Again, we're changing that goal, that resolution, more so to let's change my diet so I can do all of these other things, including improving muscle mass. So she wants to incorporate some resistance training, and we're going to strategize how that's going to work for her when it comes to her stress and her job and her commute and all of those kinds of things. She's going to figure out, and this one's a really important one in my opinion, how to set boundaries. Anytime there's stress that's an issue, boundaries, especially in women, are often the underlying problem is we're just not good at setting boundaries. We're people pleasers and we want to keep doing that. So we're going to strategize that a little bit too. And then when she does all these things, when she reduces her alcohol intake, when she changes her diet, when she incorporates resistance training and reduces her stress, look what's going to be the result. And so that's really the goal here. When you're looking at your list, are making the changes that I have listed above going to impact the ones below? Because that makes that so much easier when it comes to letting that goal be successful. So for her expectations, step 4. Number 1, this 80-20 rule I mentioned before. I've always told my patients, and I will continue to tell my patients, I expect you to strive for perfection, but I never expect you to achieve it. It just is not a realistic expectation for most people out there. And so this 80-20 rule really says if you're striving for perfection, very likely you're going to hit it 80% of the time, 20% of the time you're not. This is great. Have that mindset of, you know what, I'm going to do my best, knowing that I'm going to fail here and there, but if I can do that 80% of the time, I'm going to be successful. So have that as one of your expectations. Number 2, I can't say this one enough. Start now. Don't wait until the first. Start now. There's no reason not to start now. I have a coworker that she said it really well. She says, you got to think about your health like a flat tire. If you're on the road and you get a flat tire, you don't say, oh, I'll get to that on Monday, or, oh, I'll start on the first of the year. Start now, because even if you can make a tiny little step now, again, that's making progress forward. So for her, she's going to do the alcohol only on the weekends is her goal. She's going to remove alcohol from the home, so it's less of a temptation of making that goal successful. She's going to specify with her diet how she's going to do this. She's going to incorporate some intermittent fasting and some what we call insulin smart eating that I'll get into some more details about. She's going to do some resistance training 3 times per week. And the way she's going to do this is by, and also setting boundaries at work. There's a gym real close to where she works. And so if she can say, hey boss, I'm taking an hour at lunch, or I'm taking an hour towards the end of the day, and I'm going to the gym 3 times a week to get my resistance training in. Number 1, she's going to meet that goal with the exercise. Number 2, those boundaries are going to give her some more stress reduction that is helpful. And number 3, she's going to get a little bit of benefit for the stress by exercising during her day. That exercise is a wonderful way to help reduce stress. She's also going to incorporate a little bit of breath work, because this is something that can be done on the commute. It can be done at work. It can be done at home. It's an easy strategy to help with stress reduction. And then her weight loss goal, she'll set a measurable goal, which is 20 pounds in 6 months, which is realistic and achievable. For the support and accountability piece, number 1, she's going to go home and talk to her husband about it and say, okay, these are my goals and these are the strategies that I want to do. We're going to change how we eat. We're going to incorporate some intermittent fasting. I'm going to get a gym membership and pay for a personal trainer and incorporate these different strategies so I can be successful. And hopefully he's supportive of that. Again, she's going to hire a trainer at the gym near her work. Again, having that person, if you're at work and life is getting crazy and chaotic and you have 100 emails you need to answer, having somebody waiting for you to make your appointment at the gym can be very, very helpful at letting you set those boundaries at work and focus on your own health rather than letting it just be an excuse. Again, she's going to remove alcohol from the home. In order to help with her mental status, she's going to download some positive books and podcasts for her commute rather than listening to things like the news, which can be a Debbie Downer. Doing something positive during that time in the car can be very beneficial. To make her body composition goal measurable, she's going to purchase what we call a bioelectric impedance scale. So this way she can measure her actual body composition at home with reasonable results on that, so she can track. She wants to get that insulin resistance under control, so she's going to get a HOMA IR score done now from her doctor So, which is a glucose and an insulin that we put into a calculator. And for now, she's going to repeat it every 3 months because that's a really reasonable way to do that rather than going to the lab once a month. And then to help with her breath work, she's going to purchase something called HeartMath. I'll go over this in a little bit of detail too at the end when we talk about tools that are there to help. This is another way to force yourself, which is a strong word, but it really makes you turn off your brain and focus on the breath work piece, which can be really difficult for people with high stress or very busy jobs. And then for the maintenance piece, hopefully these become what I say no-brainers. So hopefully the alcohol becomes a no-brainer. She'll feel better. She'll have better health, all of those things. The diet, same thing, going to feel better. It's going to make big changes in her overall health. Because it's not realistic for her to have a trainer for the next years and years on end, she's going to change her membership. This is the plan. She's going to change to a membership only and still keep going, still set those boundaries at work, but not have the trainer there for the accountability piece. And of course, this can be changed if that fails. Continue with any positive listening, continue to track that body composition. The HOMA-IR, now that she's hopefully achieved her reversal of insulin resistance, can bump out to every 6 to 12 months in order to make sure she's staying on track. And then of course, just continue that breath work. So when setting goals, I call these SMART goals, and I'm sure some of you have heard this acronym out there. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and with a time frame. So every goal that you set, you want to make sure that you achieve these little markers. So for example, with the alcohol, the specificity is I'm not going to drink except on the weekends. Is this measurable? Yes, you did it or you didn't do it. Is it achievable and realistic? Yes, it is. And the time frame is we're going to start now and we're going to maintain this lifelong. For the diet, a good example of a SMART goal is say, okay, I'm going to incorporate intermittent fasting and insulin smart eating. We want it to be more specific because we want that guide. To just say I'm going to eat healthier doesn't give you much of a guide. It's not very measurable. So to make it measurable, I put in here some macro goals. For her, she's going to do at least 140 grams of protein per day. She's going to keep her carbs below 50 grams per day, and she's going to do some intermittent fasting at least 5 days a week. Is this achievable and realistic? Yes, it is. And she's going to start on Monday after she does her menu planning and her grocery shopping. So a really easy way to incorporate that time frame. For the weight piece, specific, she wants to lose 20 pounds of fat mass. She's going to use her scale to measure this. So it's a measurable goal. It is achievable and realistic for her, and she wants to reach this by June 1st. And then last, this one I threw in here on purpose because I wanted to show you a little bit about how this is a little more difficult in situations that may or may not be achievable. So her specificity is I want to reduce my perceived stress. We're going to make it measurable by saying, okay, I'm currently at an 8 out of 10. I want to achieve a 3 out of 10. Is this realistic? Maybe, maybe not. That's the hard part here. So we want to make sure we make note of that. Is it achievable? Same thing. And then the goal will be set the same date with the weight at June 1st. And so you really do have to pay attention and really assess these things as you're setting your goals. So the specific tools I mentioned, so Insulin IQ, I had mentioned earlier before, we have a lovely community, which is there for support. You can also hire a coach through Insulin IQ if you'd like to have a coach that you work one-on-one with. So you can go to insuliniq.com for that. The Feel Great system is a wonderful tool in order to help you do even a little bit better. This is a supplement or what I call training wheels to make that diet that much more effective. And so if the Feel Great system is something you're interested in, I can certainly post the link later in the chat, but there's the link there. The Keto Mojo, I haven't mentioned yet, but I really like this one specific. And again, this is specific for insulin resistance. I really like this because there is no way to measure your insulin level at home. And so the best way to do this is actually to check your ketone levels. Ketones are inversely or oppositely related to insulin. So the higher those ketone levels get, the lower your insulin is, the lower the ketone levels are, the higher your insulin is. And so we want to watch those ketone levels trend up over time with a goal somewhere between 0.5, and this is blood ketones, by the way, to 3.0. Above and beyond 3.0 isn't any more beneficial, and so it's not something you want to drive super high in an effort to get insulin down. If you're in that 0.5 to 3.0 range, you're doing a great job with your insulin resistance. For your weight, there are really simple tools. So Renpho is something that you can purchase online at like Amazon, or you can go to Walmart or Target or any of the big box stores. Those Renpho scales are extremely cheap. They're between $25 and $30, and they do a good job of measuring your body composition. So water weight, lean body mass weight, and fat. The InBody scale is a higher up, better version of this. They're a lot more money. They run, I believe, around $300. And then the Hume scale is another one that is not as pricey as the InBody, but it's a really good, really more optimal scale for measuring body composition changes. For stress, so this is that HeartMath thing I was talking about, and I'll put this in the link as well, or in the chat, so you can order it if you want. This is a wonderful device that really helps you, it gamifies for you breathing techniques. And these breathing techniques will help to lower sympathetic system activity, which is our fight or flight, which we all have, from technology to road rage to whatever it might be. And anyway, and help bring up our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest. And so 5 to 10 minutes a day on this bad boy, I have one and I love it, can be extremely helpful when it comes to improving your stress levels. Watching your Oura ring can be very helpful. We look at things like your different heart rate variability and whatnot that can tell you where your stress levels are, as well as your sleep. If it's the sleep that's leading to worsening stress, those are helpful. And when mentioning sleep, I'm a terrible sleeper, so I love my Bose sleep buds. They just play white noise in my ear and they block out all extra noise. I sleep much better when I remember to use those. So that's a simple one to do. And then there is a free app on any app store called Headspace. And it just is a guided meditation app that I recommend if you want to take a little bit more time and go above and beyond the breath work. It's a great app. So the takeaway that I have for everybody here is, number one, be thoughtful. Really put some thought into this, because we want your resolutions to be not only successful, but also maintainable. And so be thoughtful about what is realistic for you. Be honest with yourself. You know, if you know your stress or whatever is going to be a huge barrier, and you maybe aren't going to be able to achieve the 15 goals you'd like, maybe you should really settle for 5. Be honest with yourself there. You can always add more later. Be realistic for sure. You want to make sure no one wants to come in here and say, oh, I want to lose 30 pounds in 30 days. That's obviously not realistic. So make sure you're being realistic with your goals. Be optimistic. Again, if you come in with the mindset of, I failed every year before, I'm going to fail again now, you're not going to be successful. So try to have a little optimism as you move forward with your goals. Find and use, I use that, I'm going to underline that a few times. Use the support that you have available to you. And if you don't have anything available to you, again, consider places like Insulin IQ or myself. Use the tools that I have suggested here. So if you get a Keto Mojo or if you get a HeartMath, they won't do you any good if you don't use them. So you got to make sure you're using them. Give yourself a little self-grace as you go through this project or process. People who beat themselves up and have terrible guilt because they fell off the wagon for a day, that doesn't help. So you want to make sure that you give yourself a little self-grace, fix that flat tire right away, get back on track, and just move forward. And then last, but probably not least, is be patient. Sometimes this takes more time than we would like. Be patient with the process. You will be successful. And then last but not least, Happy New Year, everybody. Again, this is where you can find me if you want to either 1, schedule a consult, or 2, work with me on one-on-one different things. Venn Integrative Medicine, you can certainly reach out to. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go check the chat and see if there's anything here. Oops, and mute myself so you all can't hear me twice. Let's see here. It doesn't look like I have any comments, just some tags. Thank you for the tags. Trent, thank you for the comment. This was a pretty simple topic, and it was intended to be because I know everybody's dealing with the holidays between Christmas and New Year's. And so I just wanted to give somebody or everyone a few strategies as they move forward into 2026. That I might be doing an additional one next week. And then the week of the 12th, we're going to do a 3-part series on menopause. And so if you or someone you know is struggling with menopause and wants to learn more about it, the week of the 12th. We'll be doing it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate your time. Again, Happy New Year.